Welcome to our LanguageCert International ESOL exams. Today, we'll be sharing with you tips that should help you prepare your learners for the B1 and B2 level writing exams. First of all, a brief reminder of the key features and samples of the B1 and B2 level writing exams. Candidates need to do 2 writing tasks. Both of them are mandatory, and both tasks carry equal marks. Please note that the duration of the reading and writing tasks is 2 hours and 10 minutes, and that there is no break in between. Now, some more details about the writing tasks. As regards B1 level candidates, Part 1 requires them to produce neutral or more formal text for an intended audience. The text to be produced might be a response to a letter, poster, diary, timetable, or leaflet. Candidates will need to refer to the content points provided and write between 70 and 100 words. Part 2 asks them to write an informal text, letter or email, to a friend on a topic of personal interest. Candidates will need to include given functions. For example, explain the advantages and disadvantages of studying abroad and giving their own advice. They are required to write between 100 and 120 words. Let's now have a look at the key features of the B2 level writing exam. Here again, candidates need to do 2 writing tasks. Part 1 asks them to produce a neutral or more formal response for an intended public audience. All content points provided will need to be addressed. Candidates need to write between 100 and 150 words. Part 2 asks them to produce an informal piece of writing, which might be a personal letter, an email, a narrative, or a descriptive composition for a specified reader. Candidates will be required to include the given functions and write between 150 and 200 words. And now a few tips for teachers that should help prepare candidates for the B1 and B2 level writing exams. First of all, just a reminder as regards both parts of the writing component. Focusing on part 1, remember that the aim of this component at both B1 and B2 level is to assess the candidate's ability to respond appropriately to a given text, to produce a neutral or formal response for an intended public audience. Examples follow. As far as part 2 is concerned now, note that the aim at B1 level is to assess the candidate's ability to produce an informal letter to a friend. At B2 level, the aim is to assess the candidate's ability to produce a personal letter, a narrative composition, a story, or a descriptive composition. A few tips as regards part 1 now. Practice the text types that may be in the exam. For example, writing a letter, email at B1 level, and writing a letter, email, article, descriptive composition, narrative composition, report, review at B2 level. Stress that learners need to address all points included in the rubric. Referring to fewer points will affect the task fulfillment grade. Task fulfillment being one of the assessment criteria the assessor will use to evaluate the candidate's script. Remind them to write as much as required, that is 70 to 100 words at B1 level, 100 to 150 words at B2 level, so that they do not risk being marked down if they write less. Clarify that they do not need to write any address at the top of their text. Concerning Part 2, regularly practice the text type that may be in the second part of the writing exam. For example, responding to a letter or email at B1 level, writing a friendly letter at B2 level. Clarify they also need to address all points included in the rubric. Referring to fewer points will once more affect their task fulfillment grade. Remind them to write as much as required, that is 100 to 150 words at B1 level and 150 to 200 words at B2 level, so that they do not risk being marked down if they produce a shorter text. A few more tips that can prove useful. Remind learners that both parts are mandatory and that they need to address both. Tell them to paraphrase the topic and not copy it word for word. Practice in class the various conventions of both informal and formal letters. Remind them that who they are writing to will affect the tone and style to be adopted. Share with them that if they write more than required, they will not be awarded extra marks. Also, practice a variety of cohesive devices, for example, and, but, then, however, so that learners can clearly mark the relationship between ideas and produce clear and coherent text. While training in class, set tasks which require them to share personal experiences, feelings, reactions, opinions. Ask them to always read the instructions carefully. You may also suggest underlining key words or points to be covered. Remind them it is important to tangibly show how rich their grammar is and not to simply resort to basic grammar. Encourage them to avoid generic words, for example, good, bad, big, and prefer more descriptive, specific ones. For example, instead of good, use interesting, amazing, outstanding, or terrific. Remind them to write legibly so that the assessor can make sense of their handwriting or response. Lastly, ask them to have time for review. A piece of writing can always be improved in terms of repetitions, syntax, spelling, punctuation, etc. We hope that these tips will prove useful while you're training your learners. Don't forget to also refer to the support material we have created for you. Thank you.